Hello, dear friends. Today we're going to talk about barbed wire and how a perfectly peaceful invention turned into a real nightmare for infantry troops. Its bloody heyday came during World War I, by which time its production had already been mechanized. Wire had been made before, using the drawing method. An iron bar was successively pulled through a series of holes of progressively smaller diameter until wire of the desired thickness was produced. This was very labor-intensive and expensive. It wasn't until the 19th century, when the process was mechanized, that wire became cheaper. In 1872, farmer Henry Rose from Illinois invented a new type of fence, a wire fence with small boards attached to it, each featuring pieces of sharpened wire. He patented his invention in May 1873 and demonstrated it at an agricultural fair that summer. Joseph Glidden devised a simpler fence, made solely of wire on wooden posts. Glidden manufactured the barbs using a coffee grinder and wrapped them around the wire. To prevent the barbs from shifting, they were in turn wrapped with pieces of wire. In the United States, 270 tons of barbed wire were produced in 1875. By 1900, production had risen to 150,000 tons. All of it was intended for use in agriculture. The first military use of barbed wire occurred during the Spanish-American War of 1898. And the British began to use it extensively during the Anglo-Boer War. The British used it to build barriers along railroad tracks. Double barbed wire fences were erected along the tracks, with blockhouses armed with machine guns at regular intervals. Such fortifications were virtually impassable for mounted guerrilla units, and Boer scouts who cut through the wire became targets for machine gunners. Another use for wire barriers was the isolation of Boers who did not participate in military operations: women, children, and the elderly. This is how the first concentration camps emerged, and barbed wire became one of the main elements of their design. During the Russo-Japanese War, barbed wire was used for the first time to protect trenches on the battlefield. It was also then that sections of wire barriers were first connected to electricity. But during World War I, wire barriers on crisscrossed stakes became a standard feature of the battlefield. No expense was spared in protecting the trenches. 10 or even 20 rows of barbed wire became commonplace. It was then that the Bruno spiral appeared. This was a wire spiral that could be manufactured in a factory and delivered in a compact form inside a special cylindrical tin case. The case opened and the barbed wire spring uncoiled, yielding 10 meters of ready-to-use wire entanglement, which only needed to be secured to the ground with wooden stakes. Before World War I, the military of all nations paid little attention to barbed wire. Its usefulness was recognized as an additional element of defense for field fortifications, but nothing more. It was believed that combat operations in the coming war would be of a maneuvering nature. Before the World War, many infantry units of all its future participants did not even have their own shovels for digging trenches. Barbed wire, meanwhile, was considered entirely superfluous. Furthermore, based on the experience of the Russo-Japanese War, it was believed that the infantry could easily overcome it. All one had to do was drape a standard infantry overcoat over the barbed wire barrier and run across it. At worst, the wire would be torn during the preliminary artillery bombardment of the barrier. A single row of barbed wire without covering fire was indeed easy to overcome. But a dense, multi-layered barrier was already becoming a serious obstacle. It turned out that even heavy shelling from artillery was unable to tear through most of the barbed wire. But the infantry's worst nightmare was the combination of barbed wire with heavy machine gun fire. During the attack, soldiers were vulnerable to enemy fire, and any delay often proved fatal. If the wire barrier was intact, it took time to somehow overcome it, and the halted infantry lines became easy prey for enemy machine gunners. If, however, gaps and passages could be created in the barrier, the attacking soldiers would cluster in front of them, again becoming very easy targets for machine gunners. One could try to reach the enemy trenches by crawling, but this was slow and very difficult. Moreover, one still had to somehow overcome the barbed wire barrier. At the same time, the enemy, closely watching the neutral zone, immediately noticed a new gap in the barrier and could open aimed fire at the suspicious spot. Only the arrival of tanks provided a way out of the stalemate, since barbed wire is obviously no match for a tank. That's all for today. If you liked the video, please support it with a like and subscribe to the channel. Bye for now, everyone. See you next time.